But where hydrogen fits in is, to my mind, and I think most people would agree with this, not in the sort of mass transportation business, not in cars at the light end, but toward the heavy end of things, where either the duty cycle is more or less 24/7, and where battery charging becomes a serious issue, although that particular issue is gradually getting better. Battery charging is moving along quite neatly. But more importantly, where you have a need for more energy than can reasonably be provided by batteries. And that's where hydrogen fits in my mind. The reason it doesn't extend further, there's two reasons really. One is that it's a relatively different technology from the point of view, at least, of fueling from what people are used to. And so it's not really a terribly attractive area to introduce the general public to, in my mind, although obviously a number of the car manufacturers are actually producing hydrogen-powered vehicles, and California in particular seems to be well along to deploying some of those things. But the most important aspect of it, I think, is that if you're going to go to hydrogen as a fuel, you'd better have good reasons for doing it, because if you can do it with batteries, the battery cycle is a good deal more efficient than the hydrogen one, assuming you're using electrolysis to make the hydrogen. Right? That's not the way hydrogen's normally made today. Usually they use steam methane reforming, but the electrolysis route, assuming you have reasonably green electricity to put into it, you're probably getting 35–40% overall efficiency when it comes from electrons in to electrons at the actual wheel. So if you can do it by batteries, do it by batteries. But there are many applications where that just does not work. And so that paper looked at where one might reasonably put it, and rail came out on top. Although ships were very close behind, the important thing from the point of view of this story was that that paper happened to get picked up by Stan Thompson. And he was convinced, I guess, by the arguments, and really started the push in the States for hydrail as the way to apply hydrogen in the first place. So that's where it started. Stan has always been very generous in acknowledging that paper, and I say it was a sort of rushed off, no great depth to it, very high level indeed, but I still think it stands actually. And apart from this scattering of cars that are powered by hydrogen, which I think is a bit of a distraction, trains are where it seems to be opening up first. Canadian Pacific have a couple of locomotives that they're trying out. We've got, of course, the German example of their island trains. And the other areas that will, I think, come along are ships, where there's no way you can possibly do that with batteries. The only alternative probably is ammonia, but ammonia really is a version of hydrogen. And it has its, to my mind, disadvantages, but it has attractions too. The long-distance trucking area seems to be gradually coming alive. Buses are already quite big, particularly in China. Ballard has a tremendous amount of experience in fuel cells, and of course, I haven't explained this, it's a complicated business, but fuel cells are the way to do it. You can burn hydrogen in a diesel, but fuel cells have the huge attraction that either slightly more efficient than you can do with the diesel, but more importantly, they're tiny. And that's important because if you're trying to put together power unit and fuel storage, the space that's occupied by a diesel is shrunk down to the size of the fuel cell, and you've got lots of space now to store your hydrogen as a high pressure gas. And in some instances, liquid hydrogen will make sense, but the 700 bar hydrogen compressed gas is the obvious way to go. And I was involved about 3 years ago with quite a detailed study of hydrail applied to the network of rail around Toronto in Ontario. And we demonstrated that indeed you could do just that, that you could fit within the normal shell of a locomotive, the fuel cell tiny, and all the hydrogen storage that you needed for relatively short distances, up to about 100 kilometers. So it's coming. The prediction was, in fact, apparently reasonably sensible, and it's unfolding the way I hoped it and assumed it would unfold. The only sad part of it is it's taken 25 years for it to really take hold. I've been writing papers about the importance of combining nuclear and wind and solar renewables going back more than that. That too is beginning to take shape, because hydrogen is the ultimate flywheel from the point of view of storage of electricity when you have an excess of capacity. And so you do it typically between midnight and 6 a.m. Another of the things that we studied in this Toronto area, that if we use the cost of electricity in that period, you could provide all the hydrogen that the system needed. And the competition there was with electrification of the track. And we demonstrated, I think, quite clearly that the cost of going the hydrail route was a tiny fraction of the cost of putting up catenaries. And of course, the disadvantage of the catenaries is that you draw current at the times of peak demand, the morning rush hour and the evening rush hour, whereas with the hydrail approach, you make hydrogen when no one else wants the electricity anyway.